Thanks for watching the Abundant Life Family Podcast. I'm Bill.
And I'm Jen.
We're the Hildebrands. We're helping to build families that last. Today we're talking with Les Norman, a former Royals baseball player, about having balance as a family with kids' sports. Well, Les, it's great to have you back with us, and really look forward to hearing more of your story, but also just how we as parents can navigate sports for kids and raising our kids. You know, we often talk about the wins, that we walk the path, that we initiate godly conversations and never miss a God moment. And with those wins, you know, we want to help parents to think ahead and navigate the mile markers. What mile marker are you in? Maybe you're, hopefully for this conversation, you're beyond parent and child dedication. But, you know, all through the childhood, you're going to be looking at sports and thinking, where does my kid belong right now?
Right.
And so I want to hear some of your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you get there?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And, you know, it's interesting that we talk about those God moments. And it's important as parents, and you know this, you're veteran parents of 4. I have 2, 6 boys between the 2 families here. But in order to sometimes live out those God moments, we have to be looking for those God moments. God will hit us with the 2x4, so to speak, spiritually, if we're not paying attention. I mean, he's obviously never going to miss an opportunity to raise us how we need to go. But especially when it comes to parenting, and then you're raising future athletes or kids that just want to be in sports, we have to make sure that we understand the why behind it. What is our why in coaching them? What is our why in putting them in sports? Are we doing it because we missed out on something? Are we doing it because my kid's huge at a young age and he's going to hit homers or score touchdowns or things like that? Or are we going to raise them in a way of, I do believe that sports can have such biblical lessons that can be learned, you know, character, teamwork, perseverance, respect. There's such great opportunity to complement the truth of God's word. And so that's not how I started out. You know, I fell in love with baseball just because at 6, 7 years old, I came home one day from school riding my bike. And I think I mentioned before, you know, my dad was very abusive. He was an alcoholic, and they were yelling, screaming, and it was just one of those days near the end. It was approaching summer. School was almost done, just a couple days left. And just yelling, screaming. And so I put my books down on the patio, grabbed my glove, which I think was kind of tucked inside the door, or maybe I had it with me. And those are back in the days where you put your glove on your handlebar.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and it would just hang there. And I just rode my bike, and I started to ride and remembered, I remember passing the baseball field. It was like the movie Sandlot, and we had talked about that. It wasn't organized, just 3-on-3 or 2-on-2, and your opposite hand is out. If you hit it over there, it's an automatic out. And so I just remember seeing some kids that I didn't really know down there playing, and that's where I went, because I just wanted to be a part of something, part of something that was happy, part of something that would be joyful, and it was an escape from all of that. So I went down there, and every day the whole summer, and it took about a month for them to let me play because they had enough guys, and I was kind of the poor kid from that side of the tracks. I was not very athletic. I was kind of bookwormish is what they called me. You know, I was in 2nd grade, eventually got to 2nd grade teaching 5th graders math just because I love math. But the reality was my math teacher at the school was the father figure. He was the one that loved me unconditionally. He was my safe place. And then interestingly enough, when I wanted to join the league later on, he was my first baseball coach. So see, God was already working in that, setting me up for being a high school athlete, a college athlete, and a professional athlete, even way back then. And so, it started off just as an escape. Didn't love the game. I'd seen the Cubs play. It was about an hour south of Chicago in the farm town. But I loved watching them. That was the extent of baseball, but not like, I'm going to do that someday, until I want to do that someday. But it took me a little bit of time to get involved. And so Dad never came to a game. Never did. Mom came when she could. And so their support for me was, if the league fee was $20 and you could get the uniform and all that, then she would work really hard to get that money that I needed and get the shoes I needed, and that was the support that she could do, and so that's what she did.
Wow. That's awesome. And God put people in your life
Already.
to
Goodness.
fill
Yeah.
fill those voids, and He does that to all of us.
Yeah.
I would like to think, and I hope to think, that we were good parents with our kids, but
Yeah.
God kept bringing in great people also.
Yeah.
And so God fills those voids. And as a parent, as you look back, you don't have to regret too much. I mean,
Right.
God helps. He knows where we need the help.
Yeah,
and He does
definitely.
those things.
Definitely. And there's no perfect coaches. We were talking about that before.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't be a perfect parent. Only God is our perfect parent. He's our
That's right.
Abba Father, right? And so we're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. It's important, I feel like, to let our kids know when they're of age appropriateness. I had to do it this morning from something last week. I'd made a comment to my son, and he was just trying to help me one day, and I had a little snap on him. And today, this morning, oh, wait a minute. I didn't apologize to him for that. So I called him this morning, and I would have forgot about that. I said, well, but you still need to know
Yes.
that when we fail, we need to let our kids,
yes.
our loved ones, anybody, when the Holy Spirit convicts us, it's time to go make that right. And so coaches aren't perfect.
Right.
But as you said, God will bless us when our motives are pure and we really want our kids to learn and it's for the right motives and reasons, then God brings those people. And my kids in other sports had great coaches.
Yeah.
In baseball, they had one. It was me
You.
all
Yeah.
the time. And when they both got to the age where they both were playing, it was a juggle. It was hopefully get them both in the same tournament, but there's
Yes.
this age group
Right,
and this
right.
age group, or then Monday nights is this, and then Tuesday nights is this, and Wednesdays
Right.
this. So I think one of our big themes we're going to talk about is balance.
Yeah.
And there has to be balance in so many different areas. But the point of all that is that God blesses us with great people, and we have to make sure that our motives are always pure, as yours were and mine were.
Yeah.
And kids are kids. We were
They
kids
are.
once, but not as soon as they were, right? And so we can forget
right.
about that. So
This whole topic is reminding me, with 4 sons, I know that Bill and I had lots of conversations with the idea of balance.
Yeah.
How do we have balance as parents? Specifically, we're talking about sports. I think it's a huge topic, and it's something that we really need to think about, be intentional about as parents. And so I love that you're here, Les, because you've walked this road. We've walked
As a
it
parent
as a
and as a
parent
coach,
and as a
right?
coach. You're bringing a really, really solid perspective. So I'm excited to hear, how you walked that road and how we
Sure.
can encourage our listeners and as they're navigating this with their parents. I think what I'm hearing from you is balance, and also that you are very intentional
yes,
with not just sports with your kids, but just life in general.
absolutely.
So that's powerful.
Well, thank you. Yes, we were. I retired as a professional athlete, not because I couldn't do it anymore. I was only 30, 31, and I still probably had 5, 6 years I could have played. But it was the time where my wife and I decided the moment that we feel the Lord puts in our heart, it is time for you two to have children. We prayed like, Lord, make that be the last day. And so I was still in the season at the end of the 2000 season. It was in AAA at the time. And I woke up one morning and looked at my wife, said, I think this is it. And she said, because we had been talking about it, and I think we only had 2 games left in the season. And I went and told the coach, he said, just so you know, this is my last 2
Yeah.
games. I'm retiring. I'm done.
Yep.
And they had asked me why. And, was it, are you tired of playing in AAA? Are you, and I tried to use those gifts to honor God and be the best player I could. Wasn't always perfect, but we knew that, again, my dad left when I was 12. I never saw him again. Raised by a single mom who then did have some different marriages and different guys coming in, but the real father figure wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so before we had kids, we were intentional. Boy or girl didn't matter. I am not going to raise my children as a father from the road. We're not going to do that. I'd had roommates that played that had missed out on everything. Their marriages ended in divorce. They were estranged
Yeah.
from their kids. They would cry on the phone. Even if they had a good family unit, they missed so much. And I just wasn't willing to do that. And so we were intentional.
Yep.
Before they were even born, this is what we're going to do and how we raise them. Again, being as I grew up, once I grew, I became a good athlete in high school. Was a 3-sport athlete, played basketball, football, and baseball, and then in college went on to play 1 year of football, but 4 years of baseball. Became an All-American, 2-time All-American. Played in the Olympics, won a gold medal for the U.S. North team. Went on to be drafted by the Red Sox, turned it down. Drafted by the Royals. Eventually was a minor league player of the year for the Royals, played in the big leagues for a couple of years. And so, again, part of that being intentional was understanding if you're going to have kids and they're going to be athletes, there's a shadow that the world is going to put them under. I knew I wouldn't. They never had to live in my shadow. I wanted to raise my children to be their own person, to give them what my dad didn't. And so, again, very intentional. But we knew it was going to be a tough road, and so we really had to lock into what the Lord wanted before they were even born, and it was an interesting road.
I love that intentionality, you know, that you worked hard to make sure that that would be difficult, you know, in your career to say, okay, this isn't where we want to continue going when we raise our family.
Sure.
And make those changes. I'm sure there's people listening that may be facing some difficult decisions. They may not be a professional athlete, but whatever their career is may need some adjustment.
Sure.
In order to be a dad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that oftentimes when coaching my kids, what I saw, and this is a theme that you'll hear from a lot of people that have coached. The kids are great. It's the parents that are difficult. And so not every parent is going to be a coach. Not every parent is going to be equipped to be a coach. And that's okay. You guys you had good coaches and good people in your life. And as you mentioned, there were also some that was difficult. And I think kids sometimes can benefit on the backside from having a coach that was difficult. Because again, I became a good dad once because the Lord blessed me with that. But number two, I had a dad that showed me everything that you shouldn't do. And I was able to use that roadmap. If I'm going to California, the Rhode Island map can help me on how to not go to California. So in a weird way, you can use it if you're willing to do that. And so it's that motive of why we're going to coach our kids. Are you coaching because you want your kids just to get exercise and to be able to be active? That's a great motive. That's a fantastic motive. Do you want them to learn perseverance when they're struggle? Do you want them to just be active and healthy, to be part of a team, to learn how to succeed and how to deal with failure? Because in sports, there's success and failure, and there's more, especially in the baseball side. If you fail 7 times out of 10, you're considered one of the better players. That's a 300 batting average. I mean, we just saw a guy in the major leagues sign an almost $800 million contract. He's 24.
My word.
It's yes. I think maybe I'll make a comeback, right? So it's the motive behind why we want to coach our kids. Is it because you want your kids to be active, or is it because you missed out on something in your childhood, and so this is your chance to live through your kids? And once you start thinking that way, you're already putting pressure on your kids before the season, before their career even starts. And so that's what I've seen in some parents and in some coaches, that my kid's going to be the next big leaguer, the next NFLer, NHLer, NBAer. And those motives are not the motives I believe that God has set before us. Now, my mom's motive wasn't to pay for my fees so I could be a big leaguer. It was to, once I got in it and didn't want to be at home and just wanted to be part of it, she did everything she could to get the fees together, because we did not have much. But to get the fees together so I could be a part of that. And she was there as much as she could, almost every home game, supported me all the way through college. And so it was important for that. But there are also a lot of parents that it's not a difficult home life. But we have to make sure that our motives are, the Lord is going to bless this. I'm going to teach my child. And there has to be that balance for them on your why first, and then help them have a balance on, and we talked about the specializing of sports. Kids want to play one sport. So balance in so many areas. I'll end it there, but balance in so many areas is key. And our why, our motive as to why we're putting our children into organized sports, is also really important to pray through and sort through, because if those motives aren't right, we're setting our kids up for failure and pain.
That's so
right.
good. Yeah. and I love that as a parent, you have to understand your why. You have to be aware enough
Yeah.
to know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
That's so good. Yeah.
So I'm a parent with small kids, and I'm looking at a scholarship may be the only way they get to go to college.
Sure.
What do I do? When do I start them? When's too young? Do I put them in baseball training for batting and all
Lessons
this other
and-
extra
Yeah.
extra stuff when they're in kindergarten, or where do I
Yeah.
start this?
It's a great question. I used to actually give private lessons, but there's a different why behind it, and I'll get you there. I never had private lessons. I just wanted to play in the summer. But even back when Atari video games came out, I was never a video game kid. I was outside, even if it was raining. I mean, there were days where I couldn't find friends to play. I had this old tennis racket and an old wiffle ball, and on really windy days, I would hit the wiffle ball as high as I could and watch the wind blow it all over the place and toss the racket and go run underneath it and catch it, and then had a target into the wind with the wiffle ball and try to throw the guy out at the plate because I saw it on TV. I mean, I just loved being active and being outside. And so I think it's important to understand that, again, when we feel like, number one, and we say, well, we don't have a lot of money, so a scholarship is going to be the only way. There's two issues with that. I understand the thinking because we want what's best for our kids.
Right.
The two problems with that is, number one, what we're saying is, God, you can't provide for the
Right.
scholarship or the college down the road when they're 5. And that's 14 years down the road. And we're thinking, okay, well, that's their only shot. Well, maybe pray about that and start thinking about financial aid and helping them get with the right teachers, because there are academic ways they can get scholarships. There are grants out there. There are so many grants on the internet. We just have to know where to look, and the libraries and the internet can help you find those places. So it's don't count God out, because you can do that. And then I think the next thing is that when they're 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and even 13 and 14, the odds of a kid becoming even a collegiate athlete, you can be a high school athlete just by showing up and being a part of it. And sometimes there are tryouts. I mean, we know these bigger schools have tryouts, maybe not. But to know someone's going to be a major league athlete or a professional athlete in any sport at that time, that's really difficult to know. And it puts undue pressure on the kid. And that's why we decided not to specialize. We decided that we're going to lay out every sport. This is what basketball looks like, and soccer, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to have treats after the game, and we're not going to talk about on the way home how many goals you scored or buckets you made or home runs you hit or what your batting average is. It's going to be like, what do you want to do? You want to go watch a movie? Let's go get some ice cream. Let's go play in the yard. Let's go hang on the trampoline. Let's go swim. Let's do stuff like that. Because when we keep it going, we're fueling our passion. We think we're trying to fuel their passion. But how does a 7-year-old know what their passion is? And so the finishing point on that is, the reason I started private lessons was because I saw so many coaches that we played against beating their kids down, screaming at their kids, putting them in a tournament every single weekend. And I remember I think even in high school, the most games I ever played over a whole season was 30 to 35. These leagues now, when kids specialize in baseball, they're playing over 100 games, and they're not playing other sports. I played basketball. That really helped me get in really good shape. When I played football, it helped me lift weights and have a strong core, which helped me be a better hitter, and helped me be a better outfielder, and helped me steal bases. And the teamwork and strategy side of baseball helped me in all the other sports. And so I'm so thankful that my parents didn't force me to specialize, even when I got better. And so I taught private lessons so I could encourage kids. And I was truthful with parents. They may or may not be a big leaguer. We shouldn't be having that conversation when they're in 2nd grade, when they're in 5th grade, even when they're sophomores in high school. Let's talk about how you can get better this year. Let's talk about, if you're planning on college, okay, no problem, but how are you doing academically? Because people are going to look at your transcripts, and if you're a CD student, what they're going to look at that like, well, maybe when the chips are down, they're not going to work as hard. And I'm looking for players. College programs are looking for kids that work hard, not necessarily the greatest, sometimes the greatest. But I wanted to teach private lessons to build kids up and to be a father figure, to help them navigate it. But also sometimes, in some cases, I'll confess this, to help protect them from their parents. because sometimes parents brought them to lessons because, well, that guy, Les Norman, he was a big leaguer. He knows, and my kid's going to become a big leaguer. And if I could step in and help them realize it in an indirect or direct way, that's what I wanted to do.
And I love that. When Bill and I were raising our 4 boys, Bill was a student pastor. I was a stay-at-home mom. And we didn't have...
Hardest job on the planet, by the way, and the most thankless job on the planet. Thank you.
But loved it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
We didn't have the money for all those private lessons.
Right.
And to be on those really competitive leagues. And as a mom and dad, Bill and I would have conversations. And I think it goes back to that trust of God, that if God can do anything in the lives of our kids. And if he wants our boys to be all those things, he's going to provide a way.
Yeah.
And so that we just continued to be faithful to what God was calling us to do. And at one point, God called us to Kenya to be missionaries in Kenya. And I remember one of our boys was a couple of our boys very gifted in athletics and was thinking maybe that they might, go collegiate with it.
Sure.
And they questioned us and said, if we move to Kenya, how am I ever going to get scouts to see me? How am I ever going to, we were going to live in a little tiny town where nobody's going to see them. There's not going to be that development there, and we just went back to God is control and he's good. And if he wants our kids to do this, he'll provide a way.
Right.
We don't need to do that. And even like financially, we could have Bill could have taken a second job or I could have worked so that we had the money to put them, but we chose to stay home, to be in our children's lives was more important.
Intentional.
And that was, and we're so thankful to this day that we stuck to how God called us to parent our boys with sports, because it can be intimidating as a mom and dad. Like, are we really doing enough? Well, if we're following God and we're listening to his voice, it is. That's exactly where we need to be. So
people are shocked when I would do lessons and I would tell them, by the way, I didn't ever have a private lesson in my life. I had good coaches, sure, but I never had a private lesson. And when the fall came, I wanted to play football or nothing. I wanted to be a kid. I wanted to sit and relax. Now I wasn't playing video games. I wanted to go sledding. I remember one year when I was, I think, 10 or 11 in Chicago. I was 10. It was the blizzard of '79. We missed like a month of school and we had like 3 feet of snow over a weekend. And it was the best month of my life growing up because it was sledding every day and the frostbite and the hot cocoa and the kids and we had this big hill called Old Smoky and it had like 4 or 5 different tracks and it was amazing.
yeah.
Those are the things I remember. And so
Yeah.
I tell the families, just because he's with me, please don't set him up for that.
Yeah.
I'll give him the very best encouragement and I'll help them hit better, but they're not going to hit like me. They're not going to hit like a big leaguer. I'm going to help them hit to the best of their ability, not yours, not mine, not the big leaguer they see on TV. And so I'm so glad that you guys did that. And by the way, in Kenya, they also have cricket and soccer, right? They're pretty
Not
good over
cricket.
there. Not cricket?
Rugby.
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 Okay, rugby.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And they did do that. They
Awesome.
played all kinds of sports. So
that's awesome.
there's beauty in that.
Yeah.
As a parent with smaller kids, what do I look for in a team or in a
great.
coach or
Yeah.
a league? Do I go competitive or rec? Or
Great question. I always started my boys off at rec. They were my youngest was a little more advanced. He was just smaller, but we did rec as long as we could. Or there's competitive called like a AA division in baseball. But again, we also did flag football, basketball, soccer, archery, horseback riding lessons. We rolled the whole gamut out and the whole T-ball. And my kids were not going to play. Well, they're going to be better. They're going to play up. He's 8. He's going to play on a 14. It's a little crazy, but there's no way. I wanted them to be with kids their own development age, no matter how good or below at whatever it was.
That's good.
And so there was that balance of understanding all of that. And so it was just important for me to make sure in coaching them, it was always about the balance of first me coaching them, but when it was soccer, football, baseball, those things, I wanted coaches that weren't yellers and screamers.
Yep.
I wanted coaches that weren't living through their kids. Now, there's no perfect coaches. Right. I wasn't finding they have to be a Christian and they have to be praying every game. Now, that's a benefit. And I understood that sometimes we did play on Sundays. That's how tournaments were set up.
Yep.
And so I would bring my Bible and have devotionals. Because when I started playing professionally, you didn't get to go to church. You had a baseball game and you were getting paid to play. But we had things called chapel. And that's actually how I got saved, from a chapel leader. Yeah, that in my first season of pro ball, I was a really hurt kid and just not living a life for the Lord. I was not saved at all. And I would go on Sunday. I feel like I'd raised so much hell for 6 days. I needed to clean up in aisle 1 on day 7, right? And so, but a guy lived out what he said, and that's how I got saved.
Yeah.
And so, if I was causing these families, if they were committing to my team and they were going to play on Sunday, and they chose maybe not to go to a church service, if we had a noon game on Sunday, they could go to the 8, and we did too, just in our uniform. But if they couldn't, I was going to bring the gospel to them if they couldn't bring, because church is who you are in the group, not the building that you're in as a believer. And so I wanted to make sure I did that. So that kind of commitment was something I wanted to look for my kids, that it wasn't yelling, screaming, that it was equal play. It wasn't always the best kids would play all the minutes and then you got a minute here or there. We would sacrifice the wins and losses. We didn't care about that. I just wanted them to be able to play, to have self-confidence, to grow athletically, to learn how to respect a referee and a coach, to listen well, to look them in the eye when they were speaking. And so coaches will weed themselves out over time if you watch them. For young parents listening, do your homework. If you find a league, don't just go sign up and put them on a team. Ask other parents that have played through that league. Go watch some games in advance before you sign up and see for yourself what's going on, because sometimes it's not what you think it is on the front side. And that's so, really good. We as parents, again, have to find balance. Don't look for the perfect, and you can weed out the ones that are the yellers and the screamers and all that. And we have to protect our kids, but it's also understand that even though you're in the stands and you're at home helping them through it, I also don't want someone beating my son down because then he hates a sport. If he doesn't like a sport, I want it to be because he's not passionate about it, or because the Lord maybe didn't call him to that sport. Not because, well, I did like it, but the coach burned me out and he hated me or yelled at me. So do your homework, talk to other parents, pray. Pray. Lord, where do you want me to take my kids as we enter this season of life? So that kind of balance is
being
important.
a dad of boys, I know that almost every team that our kids were on always needed another coach, an assistant coach.
Or
and
2
so
or
there's
3.
another way for parents to get their foot in the door and have an impact, have an influence. And by my stand, I may even have an influence on the head coach and just the direction that he's heading with the team. As far as being a yeller or whatever, there may be ways to impact that. But over and over, I'm hearing take initiative.
Yes.
And balance.
Absolutely.
As parents, we need those things in our lives and in our pursuit of raising our kids. Take the initiative, look ahead, look at the teams, do your homework. I love that, what you said. But then balance and trying to find that balance.
Well, nobody's going to love your kids more than God and you.
That's right.
And so if we don't do our homework, sometimes we're letting them go to the wolves. It's that 1 Peter 5:8. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So I don't want to tie a raw steak to their neck. I want to make sure.
That's right.
I want to make sure that I still have that level of protection, because eventually they're going to get old enough where you pull the arrow out, there you go.
There they go.
Release.
Hopefully I've given you everything, and I'm going to keep
Amen.
praying for you. And Lord, do your thing. You guys have the arrows that are out.
They're out.
Yeah, and mine are at home, but there's like one arrow left. It's time to shoot it. So it's important to do that homework and make sure we protect them while we can.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for being with us today, Les. And,
Absolutely.
We'll have to get you on again soon, but I appreciate it. You've got some great wisdom for us.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's the whole sports thing has been great. My wife and I asked our sons a couple of years ago. We said, "Tell us about your life, what you missed the most or what you enjoyed the most." And sorry, it's the emotional side coming out, of course, but
It's okay.
they looked us in the eye and said that the thing we both remember the most is because that you were there. Yeah, that you were there. And they both thanked me for coaching them. They didn't play in college, but they had fun. We had fun. and we didn't beat our kids down. We enjoyed it. We created memories. I didn't want them to be big leaguers. And I told them, the day you don't want to play anymore is the day I stop coaching your team. And that's exactly what happened. They said, yep, I'm done. I said, great, let's do something else.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. But now that they're 23 and almost 20, we think back and we talk about it. And they're just thankful that we were there.
Amen.
And that's the reward.
It is.
That's right.
So good.
Let's do something else.
Yep.
So you're still doing stuff with them.
Here's the cool thing. Now, Abundant Life has these softball teams.
Yeah.
And so I coached them all these years. And now they're big and strong and all that. And so on one of the teams, I was an outfielder, but now on one of our Abundant Life teams, I play third. My youngest plays short, and my oldest plays left field right behind us.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Getting to do that together.
Yeah.
It's an incredible bonus, an incredible blessing. And to be, now they're old enough, now that they're not just my sons, now they're my teammates.
Yep.
They're my
Your
buddies,
friends.
my friends.
Yeah.
But I still have that leadership impact on them. So that's important too. So
So good.
Very good.
yeah,
Let's close in a word of prayer.
Love to.
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Lord, thank you so much for just getting to talk through some of these different things. And as we look and reflect, I pray that you help us to be parents that take initiative, look ahead, and pursue you, God. So, Lord, I thank you for the things that have been brought out today. And I pray that we can help parents to be better. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Abundant Life Family Podcast. If you found this helpful for your family, hit like and subscribe below. And feel free to drop a comment or question below. To learn more about the Abundant Life Family Ministry and the 10-mile markers to help you win at building families that last, go to our website at livingproof.co/family.